I spoke to Ukraine's Deputy Prime Minister Ірини Верещук. She's responsible for reintegrating formerly Russian-occupied territory back into Ukraine. And I began by asking her what challenges that poses.
Найбільшими проблемами все ж таки залишаються обстріли.
The biggest challenge for now remains constant shelling by the Russian Federation from their territory, rockets that damage infrastructure, which means that the winter that is coming is going to present lots of challenges in terms of water supply, gas supply, power supply, and all other challenges of this kind.
Is it then too early for people to think about returning to these areas if they have left them?
Так, і я настійливо рекомендую людям не
Yes,
повертатися.
and I very much recommend to these people not to return to these liberated territories and live throughout the winter elsewhere. Furthermore, we organize evacuation because we clearly understand that for children, women, for disabled people, it's going to be very tough to live through this winter, even on territories that have never been occupied. And it must take a lot of time to rebuild the infrastructure, and it's not going to happen anytime soon.
It's understandable, though, isn't it, that people who have been forced out of their homes and have had to live away from them for many months would want to go back. Can you stop them from going back? I mean, if they have a desire to go and see their homes, what remains of them, perhaps? Would you say, people can come back and look, or just stay away for good for the time being?
Це справді так, і
Of course, people want to come back because they miss their homeland, they miss their homes. But there's a military decision that was made for security reasons. We do not recommend these people to come back. We will see how quick we can rebuild, but because the territories are differently damaged. So some of them will be rebuilt quicker, some will take some more time. But generally, we very, very much recommend for people to go elsewhere, to wait to live through the winter with anybody else, and to take their relatives who are left on the occupied territories or just liberated territories with them to the central Ukraine or west of Ukraine.
And what about things such as mines? How much of a problem is that?
Something I would like to add is we just spoke about support people need. We just received information today. One of the people responsible for missing people in Ukraine now, they went to the occupied territories together with the military, and they discovered horrifying picture of mass graves of very big number of tortured Ukrainians. And some say it is worse than it was in Bucha. So many people, unfortunately, won't need the support that we want to provide because the enemy killed them.
And where exactly were these mass graves found?
на Харківщині вони відбули зі своїм...
This was all in Kharkiv region, and one of the people who was responsible for some sort of search and rescue mission, he said that he's been working with the issue of missing people since 2014 and with prisoner swaps. And it is the first time he has seen a picture as horrifying as what he saw today.
You know what the Russian response to this will be, though, don't you? They have already been speculating on state television that the Ukrainian side will bring out bodies, will try and make it look like Bucha. They will have that argument, won't they?
The main thing is not what they will say, but what the facts will be. And these facts will require no words, and there's going to be pictures and videos, and I really don't want our people to see that. But we have to show and demonstrate the world the atrocities that Russia is a terrorist state, has committed, and it's going to be, once again, a proof of the genocide.
And can I ask about the people in those areas which have now been liberated who decided to work with the Russians? What is going to happen to them?
Дивлячись, якою є їхня міра...
What we will do with the collaborators basically depends on their level of involvement. I am no judge, and I'm not the person who's going to decide. But if people decide to collaborate, and some of them have already been detained, we know that they damaged the interest of the state. It's all going to depend on the involvement and whether they were officials. We can't blame everybody blindly. But, for example, there was a case of a mayor of Kupiansk who very openly collaborated with Russian. And of course, people like that will receive very harsh punishments and will receive lots of years in prison, up until lifelong imprisonment.
But there will be due process, will there?
Так, звичайно.
Of course.
Can I just ask you about one international development today? We've seen this meeting between President Putin and President Xi of China, and in it, the Russian leader seemed to acknowledge that China had concerns and questions about what was happening in Ukraine. What does the government of Ukraine make of that?
Звичайно, що занепокоєння
The concerns are understandable because they know very well what crimes Russia is committing in Ukraine. China also remembers how its citizens suffered when hundreds of Chinese students were shot, attacked, and held hostage by Russia, and nobody could help them. And that lasted for many days. And I remember those days very well because I worked very hard to make sure that these students, innocent students from China, from Pakistan, from Turkey, they were held hostage. And I remember the terror in their eyes because they simply came to a peaceful country to study. And Russia wanted to kill them purposefully. And China learned its lesson. And it's a big country, but nevertheless, separate lives are very important to them. And it doesn't matter for Russia what age, what gender these people have, it will commit these crimes to people. And many Chinese suffered from this attack on Ukraine because there are entrepreneurs in here, there are businesses, and they suffered a lot. And they understand very well that if China stands with Russia, what consequences they have to bear with.
And that was Ukraine's Deputy Prime Minister, Irina Vereshchuk.